Welcome to the latest edition of the Omni Talk Spotlight series, the series that highlights the people, the companies, and the technologies that are shaping the future of retail. I'm your host, Chris Walton.
And I'm Anne Mezzenga.
And today we are turning our attention to a topic that continues to be hot. But how hot is it, Anne? That is the question we're going to explore.
Where are you going with that?
I know, right? Like kind of a good tease. I like that one.
Okay.
All right. So joining us today to share her considerable expertise, the topic we're going to talk about is micro-fulfillment. And joining us to share her expertise is the Market Development Director at Dematic, Kim Baudry. Kim, welcome to Omni Talk.
Hey, thank you so much. So happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Kim, are you excited today to talk about micro-fulfillment?
Yes, I am excited, but I may not ever get as excited as Chris does.
I know. We're joking before. Chris has had lots of coffee, and micro-fulfillment is one of his favorite topics of all time, especially we just came off of a logistics conference. So It is top of mind for us. I'd love, before we get started here, if you wouldn't mind, Kim, tell us a little bit about you and your role at Dematic.
Happy to. Thanks. I actually work in a pretty unusual role in our material handling industry. Our company has a group of people we call market development directors.
Okay.
And we are not marketing, although we have the word market in our title, and we are not business development, even though we have development in our title.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a little confusing. I get so many emails from people wanting to talk to me about marketing and business development things. No, we are actually part of corporate strategy. So we work for our company to help us understand what is driving the vertical markets that we cover and the customers that are in those vertical markets. So anything that's influencing our customers, we need to know how to solve for better. We need to know how to talk to the customer in the language that they understand. So that's really our responsibility at Dematic. And I cover the general merchandise and apparel retail verticals.
Okay.
But in general merchandise, we definitely touch in the grocery channel because a lot of large general merchandise retailers have grocery as part of their solution or their offerings to their customers.
Kim, are there more verticals than general merchandise and grocery, or like, tell us a little bit about that? Because I know, and our audience is familiar with those verticals, but like, just out of plain curiosity, like, what else does this extend to?
Oh, absolutely. So we have lots that we focus on: durable manufacturing, non-durable manufacturing, food, beverage, healthcare, which includes all your pharmaceutical, wholesale pharma manufacturing, medical devices, etc. Parcel, and a really important one that's really just seeing a lot of new work come to it is with the growth of e-commerce is third-party logistics.
Okay.
I think I got them all.
Yeah. So, I mean, the key point there, which is a great question for Man, is really there's a lot of breadth of knowledge and understanding at Dematic around the topic we're going to explore today, which is why we want to have you on the program. So I want to get really candid, especially since both you and Anne, like Anne mentioned before the podcast, were giving me a little grief for my energy level coming off my coffee here this Monday morning. But I want to get really candid, really to the point, really quickly. Kim, I want to know, is there one right answer when it comes to micro-fulfillment?
No.
Why not?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons.
Okay.
One is, and this will lead into the conversation I think we're going to get into to some extent and with a lot of detail. One is we use the word micro-fulfillment in the industry to describe what's really a movement to get products closer to a consumer. So micro-fulfillment is a technique, a method to get a product closer to a consumer. So when you say, is there one way to handle micro-fulfillment? I have to say no, because there isn't just one solution that will solve getting a product closer to consumer. There's lots of different ways to handle that.
So is micro-fulfillment even the right word then? Or should we be talking about it differently? I'm curious. That's really heady the way you started this out. So I'm curious, what's your take on that?
Well, I'd like to use close to consumer because it encapsulates a lot more than just what we've come to know as a micro-fulfillment center, basically attached to a grocery store to accomplish fulfillment of grocery orders, right? And even at Dematic, we sometimes confuse ourselves when we use the word micro-fulfillment because it's really it's really a solution. And it's not taking into consideration all of the different ways that we can get products closer to consumers. So when I speak about it, and I like to talk about close to consumer fulfillment.
Well, I feel bad because I started out like, are you excited to talk about micro fulfillment? And the whole time Kim just like, I don't even call it that. You are years behind.
I know, but she went with
forward.
it. She went with
I know.
it. She placated us.
She's a great
That's why
guest.
I like Kim.
I already love having her.
Yeah.
I do really appreciate though, Kim, the way that you talk about that, because I think it makes a lot of sense. And it's not something to be oversimplified, but what are the approaches that kind of go into that then, the close to consumer fulfillment? How does automation then come into play? What are the right spots? Can you kind of explain that for the two of us and for the audience?
Yeah. So when I think about micro fulfillment at the baseline, and where you'll see the first levels of automation come in is actually in the in-store fulfillment piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you see so many of our retailers are now using their stores as a way to ship orders direct to consumer, not just for click and collect, but they're using their retail inventory to do direct to consumer fulfillment as well. So they can do that manually out on the floor. I mean, we all have experienced people walking down the aisles of our stores with carts and an RF gun, picking stuff to, for click and collect.
Right.
Also, they're staging it for direct to consumer fulfillment. So that's the baseline, right? You do with software, you use your in-store labor to do all of that fulfillment activity, and you use your retail footprint to solve the problem of getting an order put together. The next phase then is what we all, I don't want to use air quotes because that's not appropriate, but our micro fulfillment with automation is then taking a space, dedicated space, or building a space at the end of a grocery store or a general merchandise retailer like Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
We've partnered with Walmart on micro fulfillment in Canada, for instance, outside of Toronto. And it is your typical automated, shuttles to a goods to person workstation that picks orders, and they have them ready for somebody that comes and picks them up, later in the day. So that's one set.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see customers moving away from that form of fulfillment at all. I see it growing. I see more of that activity going to move to the back room. So I'm not interacting with that person with a cart walking down my aisles, because when I'm there shopping, I kind of want to be able to get to my stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then
you want to be fighting the Instacart providers
and
for the
there's enough congestion as it is, but so all the activity moves to the back room, and there we have an opportunity, I think, in that environment to use automation,
Mm-hmm.
things like shuttles perhaps, but auto store is another example, potentially some AMRs. There's lots of different things that we can look at to solve that backroom order fulfillment. It's still in the store, but we've got a large number of retailers announcing they're actually moving to a larger store footprint to accommodate this backroom order fulfillment.
Sure.
Then the second thing, if you want me to keep going.
Yeah, no, I love you even more now because you're the first person I think in history from a company that just named a competitor too. That's fantastic. So keep going. Yes. Absolutely.
Oh, well, we're cooperative. We're competition.
You're cooperative. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, not everybody, I do want to say that this kind of the way we feel at Dematic, we can't make everything that everybody needs.
Right.
So we do partner with companies to do what our customers need. So they may be a formal partner of ours, but we also will work with companies because our customers ask us to. It's just part of what we need to do. So
no, that's great. And that's one thing we espouse at Omni Talk too. We always say we never endorse a technology because every retailer and every brand is different and your needs are different. So that goes along with us too. So, but keep going. No, I think for sure we want you to keep going. Like, I'm curious, like what other ways are people trying to get closer to consumer? You've talked about the in-store side of things, but we've heard things like dark stores, those have kind of taken on a almost, life of their own in a lot of ways. And so like, where does all that fit into?
Yeah. So definitely, I would say if you go outside, the next step of the store is a dark store. It would be really, really close proximity to stores and mostly in a suburban or urban environment. It can be a greenfield building that somebody pops up, but it's basically lights out automation, or it can be an actual store that they just don't let people in. So there's a grocery store chain, I'm sorry, I can't remember them, in the Northeast that's just decided to turn all of their stores to dark stores. So no customers are going in the store to pick, but all of their employees are picking orders in that environment. But if you move to a system where you can have the building retrofitted with automation, Tesco did this in the United Kingdom several years ago. They had 4 or 5 dark stores surrounding London, and they used full automation. Lights out automation isn't completely true, but end-to-end automation to do click and collect. Again, it was primarily for that. You do see some customers using it for doing direct-to-consumer fulfillment as well. But again, if you have a brownfield, an existing building, that kind of limits a bit the type of automation you can get in that structure.
And why is that? Because I think that's an important point that we've been hearing more and more about.
Well, so even in the in-store side of things, it depends on the store slab, or the slab of a store is not always built the same way you would a distribution center. So some high levels of automation can cause vibration and issues with the slab. So things like, again, AMR or a system like an auto store can work in those environments. And that's why we try to have a, kind of a toolkit that we pick from to work with our customers and what will work best. But yeah, dark stores would be the next thing. We're starting to see people experiment with that. I don't know that we've got a lot of momentum in that space yet, just because, again, some are trying to use existing, store facilities. Amazon is shut down, bought malls, and I think they're going to be using those as fulfillment centers, clearing them out. And then we have these, completely dedicated dark stores that were built to be made for automation, right? So there's that, again, in that category, there's lots of different ways you can solve the problem.
And the idea there too, just to recap what you said, is it's basically a smaller warehouse, essentially operating with or without automation close to the consumer. That's essentially what we're talking about here when we say the word dark store. Okay.
Absolutely. The third thing that I see coming into play is really kind of a metro hub, and generally those are used for your direct to consumer orders, but could also be used to prepare a click and collect order if they're close enough to a retail center for a retailer. But as we have all of this movement towards urbanization globally, you're going to see more and more of our customers, and they're constantly trying to solve for, how do I improve my customer experience by getting my orders faster to my customer, and that's the advantage that they have over a .com retailer, is that they have their store footprints and they're all over the place. So as they try to figure out what's the best way to service the customer, they're trying lots of different things. I don't think anybody is completely and entirely settled on one way over another. But I think it's really, we're in an exciting time. What we used to do used to be kind of boring. when you walk into a distribution center for years, it was pick modules. People were throwing things on a conveyor, get into a shipping dock, they loaded a truck. But with the influence or the expansion of e-commerce, and then this whole, the store retailer wanting to be provocative and different, they're really looking to their stores and that network to do different things for their customers and really delight them, when they come into the store, any experience they have with the brand, whether it be in the store, online, etc.
Well, Kim, how would you sum up kind of the state of where the industry is then when it comes to kind of embracing this idea of close to consumer fulfillment? You touched on a few options, but I mean, we just came from a logistics conference. One thing that we took away was that we're still very early in this process. So where do you feel, being an expert here and working with retailers and brands, where are we right now, and where do we need to go?
Yeah, I think we're still at the experimenting stage, and because there's so many things that going into making the decision of how to do this best. Chris and I shared some notes earlier, but you've got to consider your inventory play, because when you move product outside of your store and filling orders somewhere else, you're duplicating your inventory, right? Then you got to look at your transportation cost. So what's the balance of having duplicate inventory versus lower transportation, et cetera? So we work with our customers to kind of consider all that and try to figure out there is no one right way to solve this problem. And I think that it's not even a problem, it's an opportunity. So there's no one right way to go about it. And I think you have to figure out from the customer's perspective, what are their goals, right? So is it, I want to always meet the SLA of same day delivery or next day delivery. I always, or I want to be able to use my store resources always before I want to use my before I use my distribution resources. So I think what you have to do is look with them, where are they on that journey? Be able to offer a crawl, walk, run approach. So, very basic RF driven picking to semi-automation to full automation, if that's where they want to go. I think that some of this will shake out and will prove to be, the micro-fulfillment, the typical micro-fulfillment solutions, I think definitely have a place. I'm not saying that's going away by any means. I mean, we participate in that. But there are, there's some nuances that would change one retailer's viewpoint on how they should solve the problem. What's the best way?
When you're thinking about those kind of strategies, or you're working through those options with some of the clients that you work with, are there hurdles that they have to get over, or challenges to kind of embracing like maybe a pick from store versus, going the way of traditional distribution center, and like exactly what you were saying, like the expectations of the consumer of, is it worthwhile for us to get this to you faster, or for us to be able to maintain low prices because we're using more efficient, distribution centers or something? Like what are some of those challenges that they're getting over?
Yeah. One of the ones that we learned in micro fulfillment was having a store employee working with automation.
Really?
So that's it. I don't know that people that dip their foot into this understand that as much. But you've taken a person that's been working on the floor with customers facing, talking to them, and
Right.
That's a different mindset than sitting at a piece of automation all day long. There's no customer interact, and you're sitting in front of, a terminal or a goods to person station is telling you what to do. Pick two of these, do that, it's a completely different job.
Yeah.
So I think there's part of that we need to think about when we go into the automation. And then again, the things like where am I keeping my inventory? It's one of the biggest things our customers that we speak with think about is, do I want to keep all my inventory for direct to consumer fulfillment at the store? Or do I want to keep it back at the distribution center? Or I'm doing a mixture of both, because that's an expensive discussion, right? Like if you have duplicate inventory or you have it in the wrong place,
Right.
That's another huge consideration. And then really, what's my appetite for automation? As a company, how am I embracing that? We're seeing some traditional retailers starting to really move outside of what would have been their traditional comfort zone with regards to automation, and they are even promoting it, on LinkedIn. But look at, because they actually, it's a competitive advantage. Customers say, "Oh wow, look at my favorite retailers, doing all this great stuff to make sure my products get to me when I want them and how I want them." So I think those are some things to consider. What labor force are you using? What's my inventory play and my transportation play? And then what is my appetite for automation? It's okay not to have a huge appetite for automation to start with, right? And that's what I think is great, that we're able to go on a kind of a journey or a path with our customers to figure out where they are and where they want to be, where they should be in the future.
Yeah, this is a great interview. I love this interview, Anne. So, I mean, a couple of things I just want to call out there that you said that you made me think about for the first time, which is particularly the part about which employees you want working the automation in the back room. Because I think back to my store manager days.
Yeah,
you'd have the stock boys, for lack of a better way to describe it, stock boys or girls, whatever you want to call them. And they'd come in the morning, get the job done, and then they'd leave. And then the bulk of the staff would be, on the floor, out facing the consumers. And now when you talk about this type of model where that setup is working round the clock 24/7, that's a complete shift in the workforce.
Absolutely.
You're having to hire entirely new people, which can't be the easiest thing to do right now, given all the staffing shortages we're hearing about. And then the other part too is the software side of this is crazy, because if you're going to place your inventory in two locations, you have to figure out how your order management system is going to handle that. You have to figure out how your allocation system is going to handle that. It has to work in tune with the warehouse automation system too. So man, there's just so many things going on here. So Kim, I'm curious then, I want you to put your Nostradamus hat on for us now.
Oh,
how I know, right? On Monday morning, it's a big ask. How does all this play out? Like what happens first, then what happens next? Like talk us through that in terms of the evolution of close to consumer fulfillment from an industry perspective.
Okay, since this is a complete prediction and and guess,
it's okay.
Basically.
You don't have to be exactly right.
Informed prediction.
Okay. Don't come
we'll
after
give you
me
Vegas
in a few
odds
years.
either way. It's fine.
Yeah.
Don't
come and say, hey, Kim, you were so off. Like, what the heck? But, this is what I think. I think that because of our labor challenges, and again, this is a global issue. It's not just in the United States. And I don't think the general person that I talk to in my friend group doesn't understand that we are going to have a labor availability issue for years to come, right? So I think no matter what, eventually, as our customers, our retailers strive to continue to exceed customer expectations and just do something, that beats their competition, in order to have that sustainable, there will have to be automation in play, right? Eventually. So, but again, I think there's a lot to learn between today and my fully automated mini DC that's going to service click and collect and direct to consumer fulfillment. So I think you're going to see, because also it's just, I embarrass my children regularly while they're grown, but they still go around. We travel together a lot, and I have my phone out, I'm in a store, and I'm not going to name them, but I'm like, we were in New York City a couple of weeks ago, and I said, look at these totes in the middle of the floor. I can't even, because in a metro environment, they don't have back rooms.
Right.
So they're dropping inventory in the middle of the floor, and then the store person's trying to figure out what to do with this. And I just think that there will be a better way. Right. And I do think it's going to be a combination of first just starting, like I said, crawl with your in-store staff, doing things manually. And I'm starting to see it. I'm predicting that we're going to see some of these retailers are saying, I'm doing back room. I'm making my store is bigger to do back room fulfillment is perfect for automation. We've done it with customers, Decathlon and Martinique, where we have automation in their back room to help them, fill their orders out of the store. So I think we'll see that progression, and I think we'll see it probably happen probably in the next 5 years. I think we'll start seeing more clear paths on which way customers are going to go with that. Because again, we just don't have the people to do the work. And if you want to do it efficiently, because if you don't do it efficiently, you're going to do a couple of things. You're going to waste your money and you're going to upset your customers. So that's my prediction. I think that we will see more automated mini DCs, either close to the store or in the back room of a store. And making those two worlds work together will be an interesting, path for us to all go down. The store and the distribution center kind of in the same place.
Got it. So what you're saying then, if I sum up, is you're saying you're going to see more of the retail industry try to shift their operations to the back room. And then that is therefore going to require, based on the points you were making before, better training and staffing to that new operational design, so to speak. And then last but not least, there's going to be the element of adding automation when you get to that point. Is that the right summary there then?
Yes. And I also want to say that it might not be always back room. I think the growth of the dark store will also be a trend that we'll see because of that issue that we talked about. I think when they're either going to have a dedicated backroom staff that does order fulfillment all day long, so that doesn't trouble the front of the building worker. So a dark store allows you to do that because those people that's what they do. They fill orders just like you do in a distribution center. So I think you'll see a combination of those two things happening. And automation
back
makes
or
sense.
out of store, basically. Back or out of store. Got it.
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
sure.
Kim, what does that look like then once it starts to expand more, like at a macro level? Because I'm curious, like I'm just thinking about myself, like as a former store floor employee at J. Crew or whatever. Like, what does a day in your life look like once this automation starts to expand? What is your role? how are we seeing like other markets who might be further ahead of the US in this? Like, how are we going to see what's happening there kind of start to take place here in the US?
Yeah. Well, the other countries are driving the automation journey faster because their land is more, so they've had to go to smaller distribution,
Sure.
not smaller. They've had to go to distribution centers that are vertical instead of
Right.
horizontal in many countries outside of the US. So they're already in a way adapting to this concept of working in a highly automated, because as they get closer to the city centers, their land costs more, and the people that they employ in the distribution center costs a lot more.
Mhm.
So they're dealing with 3, 4, 5 level buildings where they're automating. And so I think that they're ready, a little bit more ready for this, concept of having even a smaller DC closer to the urban environment.
Sure.
But I also think some interesting things happen where the retailers, like I said, on LinkedIn, they're publicizing all this
Right.
automation that they're investing in as like a competitive advantage. But a lot of them are actually wanting to showcase the automation in the store. So they're talking about having like a glass window
Like a car
to look in
wash
the
sort of
back
view.
room,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So some really creative, interesting things, So again, I think the store employee, if you're working in, I know that if I go into J. Crew and I want some help,
Right.
or anywhere, like I want store help. I want to be able to interact with you. I don't, right? I don't want you worrying about somebody else's order when I'm in there trying to buy my stuff. So I think that it's segregating that workforce will eventually make enough sense that, that you have a store fulfillment person,
Right.
or order fulfillment person, and a store customer facing person.
Right. Yeah. I wonder, like, that's what exactly kind of what I was thinking was like, do you end up, instead of going through and scaling racks in the back room to get a size for somebody on the floor, are you able to use automation to like, I need a size medium turtleneck or whatever, and then it's coming to you, like you're able to use the same picking almost that you would be if you were fulfilling an online order, or if you're helping somebody in store just to like get it more quickly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, then my brain goes into a lot of different technologies we could use.
Right.
Like, like for that, it'd be like the overhead pocket sorters,
Pocket
solutions,
sorters,
right?
yeah, right.
And you got to have some space for that, but it's all overhead,
Right.
So, and when you walk into stores, some of these big box retailers we have, I mean, you ever look up and go, wow, there's a lot of space up there.
Right.
There is, yeah. Especially the big box.
So there's lots of different things, that could be experimented with, especially in apparel, because you're saying, I need this size and this color, and go sort it and bring it to me.
Right.
So yeah, very interesting.
Kim, let's get you out here on this. Just one quick question. Then does net that mean that, on average, the distribution centers we're going to build here in the future get smaller, at least here in the United States?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're already seeing that happen. There's network strategy rationalization. And first of all, we used to talk to customers about, well, I've got an East Coast DC, but it takes me forever and a lot of money to service my customers on the West Coast. So they would do East Coast, West Coast, and then they started doing regional, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're starting to see our customers that have done that, adding these metro hubs, right? Or getting something smaller. So I think, yes, because to service where our people are living and to meet those expectations of getting my product quickly, you're going to see smaller DCs. I think there'll still be a case for large regional DCs to supplement the smaller ones. Mm-hmm. But if you go to Europe, there's very few million square foot, distribution centers, because the land is so expensive. And, again, they're also trying to meet the customer requirements. But I think we've had in North America the advantage of having cheap land and relatively cheap labor. And I don't think those things are going to continue to exist for us. So.
Right. And where that land is doesn't put you closer to the consumer. Which
no, exactly. I mean,
at the very beginning, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
Upper Peninsula of Michigan, no, don't see a lot of distribution centers.
Right. All right. Well, that was great. That was so wonderful. I love this interview. This is one of my favorites for sure. So Kim, if people found this conversation interesting, want to get in touch with you, want to get in touch with Dematic, like what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love to talk to people more about this topic. You certainly can follow me or reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just Kim Baudry, Baudry. Sounds like looks like Baudry, but you say it Baudry.
Is that Cajun?
Or what's that?
Is it Cajun?
It's French. Yes, it's French Cajun.
Yeah.
French. Wow, nice.
Yeah. Oh,
nice.
I've got family in New Orleans, and
Nice.
Baudry is definitely the way that you
Yeah.
pronounce that last name.
If I go to France, people know how to say my name.
Yeah.
Otherwise they don't. Or in New
Wow.
Orleans. And then also Kimberly, which is Kimberley. My mom put that E in there, special, .Baudry@Dematic.com.
Awesome. Great. Well, hey, that wraps us up. Thanks to Kim Baudry of Dematic for sitting down with us today. And thanks to all of you for listening in. And as always, on behalf of Anne and all of us at Omni Talk, be careful out there.